Good morning, Metalheads here, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we're looking at the latest album from Torche. I don't fucking know. It's their new album, and it's called Admission. This is the fifth studio album from this sludge and alternative rock fusion band from Mr. Steve Brooks, a band that he formed out of the ashes of another band, Floor, which was playing around with a very similar style. However, Floor was more rooted in a kind of dreamy, ethereal kind of doom metal, whereas Torche is more interested in expanding the ideas of Floor and bringing in all kinds of new influences and new concepts, and the results have been some of the strongest and most unique metal albums of the last decade. Take, for instance, Harmonicraft, which many still consider to be their best for its fantastic fusion of contemporary hard rock influences, pop rock influences, alternative metal, and sludge metal. I think at the time I was still writing for Bring on the Metal, and I think I said something to the effect of Foo Fighters meets the Melvins in a stadium rock setting, and I 100% still agree with that. Or an album like Restarter, which was released not long after Steve released another album with Floor, and thus more of the Floor influence was brought back into play, and Torche was also playing around with some cool grunge influences on this record as well, toning down on some of the pop and getting into some angstier, moodier pieces. And the answer is honestly a combination of all of those things. In some parts they're extremely dark and heavy and metallic and foreboding, and in other parts they're poppy and ethereal and dreamy and psychedelic. In many ways, this is their most mature and inherently metal release of their entire career, but they have not toned down on the pop or the alternative melodies at all. Quite the opposite. Some of them are expanded on and played with in some new ways. And in the hands of Torche, this all works out really well. In the hands of any other band, I don't know. I mean, you literally have a mixed bag of styles. It stands to reason that you would have a mixed bag of outcomes and executions, but again, that's not the case for Torche. They know what they're doing, and they do everything with maximum effort and confidence and intelligence. And while I would say that Harmonicraft is still my favorite record, this is probably a close second, just for me personally at this point. And the record starts off right away displaying all of its weirdness and confidence and power on the track From Here, with one of the more metallic riffs on the record, to the point where it even has this kind of thrash metal embedded underneath it that reminds me of some of the more ethereal material from High on Fire. Particularly when you have those melodies floating on top of it, and it transitions extremely nicely into a following track, Submission, which is one of the tracks where we see more influence from Steve Brooks' other project, Floor, come into play. We're hearing more of the doom. We're hearing more of these massive, spacey, trippy melodies. Slide plays around with a lot of those same musical ideas. It's slower, though. It's more brooding, but interestingly, instead of following it up with a real unleash of power, Torche kind of let loose on a track like What Was, which has this pop-punk energy to it that reminds me a lot of Harmonicraft, but with a much more metallic bass. And that kind of sets the pattern for the record, them jumping between these styles and these paces and these ideas, but they do it quite seamlessly. It never feels jarring, it never stops the flow of the record. It actually kind of keeps you on your toes as you get these more aggressive sections followed by slower sections, and these more upbeat songs followed by more depressing songs. And from there, the whole record just gets weirder and more colorful and more eclectic. Take, for instance, on tracks Admission and Reminder, both of which build upon kind of an indie rock, alt rock bass, and on top of that, layer it with sludgy riffs and atmospheric vocals and soundscapes. And even as these tracks grow sonically heavier, particularly on the latter track Reminder, which has this Alice in Chains kind of pacing to it, they never compromise the weird, ethereal, spacey melodies and soundscapes floating on top of that. It actually feels quite ambient and paints a really lovely and tranquil setting over top everything. Particularly with the former track, Admission, which really does, more so than anything else on this record, feel like something that could have been on the last Floor record, Oblation. And then there's a track like Infierno, which honestly caught me off guard with how devastatingly heavy it is. It is slow, it is lumbering, it is menacing, it is covered in static and fuzz and dread. It's so slow and heavy and miserable that it honestly sounds like the band walking through a rainstorm, dragging their guitar amps behind them, miserably plodding away. Hands down the heaviest thing on the record, and maybe the heaviest thing Torche have created in a long time. Overall, I really enjoyed this record. It's smart, it's powerful, it's versatile, it's eclectic. It's got a lot of different sounds and ideas from across Torche's discography, from across Steve Brooks' discography for that matter, combined into one great palatable meal. Sure, the pop influences that made Torche who they are not quite as obvious as they were before, but that's not inherently a bad thing, and there's still plenty of really great, catchy, engaging hooks to sink your teeth into. I'm going to give this thing a 4 out of 5. I think it's an incredibly solid record. I doubt that any fan of Steve Brooks and Torche would be upset with this. I think it's probably their best album next to Harmonicraft, as I said earlier. If you're looking for something really weird and psychedelic within the realms of doom and sludge metal, you really can't go wrong with this. If you're looking for something a little more versatile and progressive, you can't go wrong with this. If you're brand new to doom and sludge too, this is a great record to check out because you get to see the broader spectrums of those genres as well as the broader spectrums of alternative metal. You get to see the influences from Alice in Chains and the Melvins. You get to see them come into form with this really psychedelic, weird, melodic sludge, and it's not overtly punishing or grueling the way that some doom and sludge is, because it still has those really great melodies and some really great versatile songwriting. The only other thing I can say about this record as far as a negative goes is that maybe some of the riffs here and there meander and ponder away, but that's kind of the nature of doom and sludge, and Torche even realized that, because whenever you start to feel that way, they tend to move on pretty quickly. They've edited all these songs really well. They've trimmed them down as best they can without losing anything essential. So yeah, 4 out of 5, great record. Happy to have something different from my way. These last couple of weeks it's been a lot of underground death and black metal, and that's even what it's going to be for most of July for that matter. So this was a nice palate cleanser. This was a nice change of pace. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.